Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at the Toybiz Marvel Legends. We're looking today at the Galactus series, Professor X. Not only is this figure featuring 33 points of articulation, but it also includes the head required to build your very own Galactus. 16 inches of Galactus, I might add, as well. So it's a really long, really tall figure. I think it's still dwarfed by the re-release, well, not a re-release, but the new Galactus that they released a couple years ago. It was a little bit taller, I think, than this Galactus, but back in the day, this was a pretty impressive Galactus. On the back of the package, the figures that make up this set, there's the Incredible Hulk, there's Nightcrawler, Bullseye, War Machine, Deathlock, Professor X, and Doctor Strange. Your two variants were an angry Bullseye and also a green Hulk. Your read-up says, telepath, teacher, visionary, the planet's most powerful mutant is also its most compassionate leader. In pursuit of his dream for peaceful coexistence between Homo sapiens and Homo superior, Professor Charles Xavier established his school for gifted youngsters to help a secret class of troubled teenagers hone their strange abilities and protect society from those who would use such gifts to rule mankind. Today as ever, he and his X-Men stand in defense of a world on the brink of genetic war. You can head over to www.toy... Oh, no, you can't. Sadly, Toybiz is not producing figures anymore. But back in the day, you could head over to www.toybiz.com. You would have saw a whole... It'd been like a kid in a candy store. You would have saw all the stuff that they are producing. And Toybiz actually produced quite a bit back in its day. Spot's going to take a break and get this opened up. When we come back, we're going to get a better look at Professor X. Don't go anywhere, guys. There's more heading your way. Stay tuned. Professor Charles Xavier comes with, still only 35 cents, number 117, The Uncanny X-Men, The Saga of Professor X. Down below it says Psywar. This cover interests me enough that I'm going to probably open this up and read it after we have a look at the figure. 35 cents. When was the last time you picked up a comic that was 35 cents? Maybe unless you went to a flea market. Some guy just says, hey, guy, you want to go through my box? What? You want to go through my box? I got some comics. And they smell, they smell like a really mildewy basement. Oh, I hate that. But you still look anyways. And you probably still buy them because they're cheap. And then you get them home and then they stink. Nothing worse, nothing more depressing than a smelly comic book. I digress. Moving that to the side. Professor X, of course, also comes with the head of Galactus. A very impressive piece, to say the least. And again, 16 inches tall. This, back in the day, was quite impressive. Since then, and I say since then, but it was probably, 3-4 years ago, they released the Marvel Universe version of Galactus, which had the lights and sounds. It was a little bit bigger than, I believe, this guy right here. But you know what? This guy still holds up well. If you were lucky enough to pick him up, I think he still holds on a collection just as well as the Marvel Universe one. He doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but you know what? Still an impressive-looking figure. Sadly, I didn't have all the pieces to form Galactus, or we would be doing a build series of videos as well. But there's the head of Galactus. Moving it to the side, Professor X also comes with Cerebral, his little helmet here. It's not as pliable of a rubber as I thought it was going to be. It's actually a little more denser of a rubber. But you can take it, put it on Mr. Xavier's head. You get something that looks like that, and you can kind of have him. Wolverine, I'm sensing that you're making me a sandwich. I'm not making you a sandwich. I'm pretty sure I'm sensing you making me a delicious roast beef sandwich. I think that's what Professor X does all the time. He just bullies people to do his, his work. Beast, I'm seeing you doing my gardening. I've got some weeds that need to come up. Professor, I wasn't doing any. I really see you doing my yard work. Apparently I'm doing your yard work. Ah, yes, the power of deducing. The powers of deducing from Charles Xavier. Anywho's. It's not a bad looking figure. It's, take the helmet off here, for example. The thing for me, though, is it really depends on what you consider to be an ideal Charles Xavier. Depending on your age bracket, you might be into more the Charles Xavier with a regular wheelchair. If you grew up in the 90s like myself, well, reading comics in the 90s, you probably would have liked the yellow hover chair that he had as well. I kind of wish we had always gotten a hover version of Charles Xavier versus the one that's in his chair. But, I mean, as you can see, things kind of go full circle because he got a more basic chair back, you know, when the comics were around. It was just a straight wheelchair, and he probably had Beast pushing him around. And then he got something like this. Then he got the hover chair. Then in the movies, he went back to something like this. So it kind of really went full circle. Personally, I kind of always wanted to get a hovering version of Professor X. And I think the only one we've gotten really so far, up to this point of the time I'm shooting this video, is the Marvel Universe version of Professor X, which I think had that hovering chair. But the Jim Lee X-Men era was really my favorite era of the X-Men. He's got a good looking face sculpt, though to be said, the paint is a little off. More really in the neck. The neck is a much lighter color than the rest of his flesh color in his face. This is also a much younger looking Professor X too. He's not old, and he still looks wise, but he doesn't have the aged wisdom that we would have gotten with some other Xavier figures. And I say a lot of other Xavier figures, but really we haven't gotten very many. His three-piece suit is very nice, and it kind of has that same thing. I was going to say a problem. It's not really a problem, but it has the same thing that the DC Universe, DC superheroes Clark Kent had. Being that these are all suited characters, a lot of people bought a lot of these Xaviers to pop the head off and change it out with other characters. And I've seen a lot of customs where people have taken this body and put on top of it like a Norman Osborn head. Or, you know, put on it like a Tony Stark head. There's a lot of things you can do with this body that if only Charles Xavier really knew how much of a demand this figure was, solely because of what he was wearing, not necessarily the fact that people just wanted a Charles Xavier figure. We will get his articulation out of the way first before we put him into his chair. It just makes things a lot easier. His articulation is his head is on a ball hinge joint. So you see the hinge right there moves the head up and down, but then the ball joint sits on top of that. So you get a lot of movement that way. The shoulders seem to be on just straight hinge sockets, so they do move forward and back out. Nice swivel in the bicep, double bend at the elbow, swivel and hinge in the hand, and a hinge in the fingers. You guess if you wanted to, you could have Charles Xavier walking like an Egyptian. I don't know if he probably wouldn't like that, but you could do that if you wanted to. He does have a swivel. It's just a straight swivel in the waist area here. And his legs go forward, back, out. But it's this awkward, I hate these joints, where you have to rotate them. See right now the hinge goes this way, and the leg goes forward. But equally so, to get the leg out this way, you have to rotate the ball joint, and then it can go out. Then he's got the swivel in the thigh, nice double bend at the knee, swivel in the lower calf area, a bend in the foot, and hinge in the toe. It's somewhat ironic, too, the fact that he is as super articulated as he is for the fact that he can't walk. And Spot's not knocking the fact that he can't walk, but it's just somewhat ironic that, he is as articulated as he is for, what little he probably will end up doing. So you can take his legs and just kind of bend them out this way. You'll see on the back there are two peg holes. And you know what? We'll just put Xavier down for a second. He just sit. He's not going to go anywhere. Let's have a look at the chair first before we put him into place. It has two large wheels, the nice X wheel there. And then on the undersides, he's got two front wheels, two back wheels. So moving the wheelchair won't be any issue whatsoever. But looking on the bottom, it kind of looks like something that you want to wind back and then it zips forward. It doesn't do that though. He's got some controls on his console there, little side arm console there, and he's got some nice padded seat and padded back for him. To get him into place, you're just going to again take that figure, peg his back into those holes like so, and then you just basically going to straighten out his legs, straighten out his legs, straighten out his arms, depending on how you really want his arms to be. You can kind of just lay them flat like so. It really benefits also the fact that his fingers can be articulated. You can kind of bend the fingers over the edges of the arm. And then you just straighten out his head, and there you have, bada bing, bada boom, you've got Professor X crippled and in his wheelchair. Again, a really nice piece, but for me personally, I like this. I just wish at some point we had gotten, or maybe at some point we will get, Professor X in his yellow hover chair. That would be a figure I definitely would want to get, and you know, we've already kind of gotten that with the Marvel Universe figures. We've gotten a Marvel Universe Jean Grey too, so maybe Spot might slowly trying to put together a Jim Lee X-Men diorama using the smaller 3 3/4" figures versus the Marvel Legends figures. Or maybe, you never know, maybe Hasbro might come to their senses and finally release a Charles Xavier in his wheelchair, at least his yellow wheelchair. Charles Xavier is a good-looking figure, and again, perfect fodder for if you want to make any custom figures that are business suit wearing. As a figure on his own, he's got a good-looking sculpt, he's got a lot of articulation, and the inclusion of Cerebro is also a nice touch as well, of his helmet at least. Charles Xavier, I'm going to give you an 8, sir. Thank you for being around and filling my day with joy. Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at the Toybiz Marvel Legends Apocalypse series, Charles Xavier. Stay tuned, Spot's going to have even more videos heading your way, more Marvel Legend videos also heading your way as well. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Now to get my yard work done. Come on, mutants!